it's been a while.
Yeah, we took a week off.
Yeah, which is weird because I know when we started this, we were like, oh, maybe we'll do it every other week. And then we loved it so much, we were like, no, we're going to do once a week. But I feel like last week was just so...
Yeah. I think it was time. We needed a break. We've been doing this consistently, like, basically every week.
Since June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I think last week with, like, the holidays, it was Halloween last weekend, and just... There's been a lot of, like, adventures and craziness with, like, the elections coming up and passing now, and I think it was just time. We did some self-care. We had some time together. Definitely. Just, like, a wonderful day of being friends.
We definitely just needed that nice little time. We did make a vlog. If you guys have not watched it, go check it out. But yeah, I feel like we're super happy to be back doing this. I feel like we haven't done it in so long. In reality, we've only missed 1 week.
I know. It feels like it's been ages.
Yeah.
But we're here. We're ready. And I feel like very refreshed for this. Like, I feel ready.
Yes, I definitely needed that break.
Because I think we went into last week, like, feeling like, I guess we could do it if we need to, but, like, we weren't in the right, like, headspace for it. And we need, like... I think that it was good that we listened to ourselves.
I agree. And I feel like, too, you know, we always want to put out the best content, the best episodes, you know, at our best. And we just, neither one of us last week were, like, ready. We were not going to be at our best. And we want to make sure this is, you know, quality content.
Yeah.
And quality, like, talks and, you know, whatever. And last week, it would not have been quality. It would have just been, like, do it just because we felt like we had to. And so I'm glad we both listened to our bodies and our minds and just took the break.
We had a moment where we looked at each other, and I think I brought it up. I was like, are we doing an episode today?
Yeah.
And we're like,
nah.
Like, what if we didn't?
Yeah, so, but it was good because we had that vlog, and if you guys haven't watched it, you should go check it out. We make some chocolate-covered strawberries, do a little mental health screening, lots of fun.
So much fun.
But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. And Catherine, how are you doing this week? How's it going?
Well, first, you didn't even introduce what episode number we're on.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. Hello, friends. Welcome to episode freaking 17. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I didn't do that. That's how you know it's been a while since we've recorded.
And I also would like to say that we've turned over a new chapter where, like, you now know the episode number that we're on. It's really an exciting time.
I'm proud of me now.
I'm proud of you, too.
Am proud. Proud.
So, yes, episode 17.
We're here. We're doing great. Feeling refreshed. Have some frosés with us in our Starbucks glasses. Like, we are just solid, ready to go. On that note, Catherine.
Yes.
How are you doing today? / this week, because today's a great day.
Yeah. I'm doing well. I have had a good week. I've felt like good at work. I've felt, you know, even in moments where I've had kind of tough conversations or tough decisions, I felt okay. This last Thursday, I spiraled a little bit with, I think just the elections and the stress of everything kind of threw me off kilter, as I think it did for a lot of people.
Everybody. Not everybody, but a lot of people.
Yeah. And so I had some spiraling thoughts, and my anxiety kind of kicked in, and I had some of my intrusive thoughts, but again, I was able to manage and did pretty well. And I've officially passed the month mark of being on my medication.
Nice. High five.
Right? And I'm feeling good. I think that it's been a really nice week. Like, I think starting last weekend with Halloween and now into this week, it's just been good. I've been able to feel content and happy with people.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. Courtney.
Yes, hello.
How are you doing?
You know, so I feel like I loved Halloween weekend. I had a really wonderful Halloween weekend. Like Catherine mentioned earlier, on Halloween day, we actually spent the whole Halloween day together. We we did some shopping, and then we came home, we dressed up, and it was a lot of fun. Definitely better than my last Halloween.
I think most things could probably be better than last Halloween.
Even if I didn't do anything on Halloween day, it would have been 100,000 times better than last Halloween.
Yeah.
But I feel like I was really struggling to get through the month of October, and I'm feeling a lot better just knowing that I got through October.
Yeah. And for those of you who are kind of just joining us for this episode, Halloween weekend is kind of a very like triggering, traumatic time for Courtney. Approximately a year ago, some stuff happened. If you didn't listen to our last episode, we talk about it more in depth. But yeah, so that was kind of the anniversary of that.
Yeah, so we do go that in depth in our previous episode. So listen to episode 16 if you haven't already. Hey. But yeah, so I feel like I was really just trying to get through October, and I did it. My family's healthy. We're all healthy. Like I had, you know, I remember in episode 16, I actually talked about trying to have a goal of doing different Halloween makeups at least 3 times or 2 to 3 times. My goal was 3, but I was like, if I only do 2, that's okay. And I did 6.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah,
like, I was just so in the mindset of, like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to set this time for myself. I'm going to make this week, like, fun. I'm going to do what I can to make it, you know, just to make things that make me happy, because last year I went through so much trauma that I just wasn't okay. And so I really wanted that week of Halloween week just to be like happy and doing things that made me happy. And so I tried out a bunch of different makeup looks, and it was just super fun. I'm still so surprised that I ended up doing 6 Halloween looks. So from Monday to Saturday, I posted a Halloween look every single day, which is like wild, even if it was simple. Thank you. I was proud of me too. I thought that was really exciting. But so I am really happy that I got through October. It feels very like refreshing. It feels very like, okay, like I got through that part. Like I got through, not only did I get through the hard part last year, but I got through the hard part this year. So I'm feeling very like, okay, I did it. Great, wonderful. But this past week, I feel like I've been doing okay. Obviously, lots of anxiety because of the election, but I've been doing okay. I had a mini breakdown last night, but I will blame tequila for that.
Tequila will get you sometimes.
Tequila came up and bit me in the ass.
It's kind of like, here's all those things that are laying underneath the surface that normally we can like manage and kind of like process through, not think about, and then tequila's like, let's open the floodgates, let's let that all out. Let's
cry about literally everything. That was me last night, but I'm okay now. Still have
getting back to baseline.
Still have those underlying things that did make me cry last night, but you know, it's whatever. I did it. I made it through October. I'm doing pretty great. Today has been a really wonderful day.
It has.
So I bought a bunch of Christmas decorations, a new Christmas tree, celebrated other things.
I think that November is kind of a good like refresh. It's kind of like the like next chapter of the book. Like you've made it through October. It's like, okay, now let's move on. Let's, you know, enjoy the things that are coming up, and let's just like have a fresh start.
It's like a deep breath. Like it's like that sigh of like, okay, I can relax now. Like I made it through that really hard part that just seemed almost impossible.
Yes.
So I'm doing
good.
Also,
like I don't know if you sigh as much as I do, but I love to sigh. And it's like, it feels so good. It feels so good. I do it all the time.
There's sometimes we're hanging out and you're just like we'll be quiet for a few minutes. We'll be like just doing something, like it'll be quiet. And then all of a sudden Catherine will just be like, and I'm like, are you okay? Like, what's wrong? She's like, oh, nothing. Did I do? What happened? And I'm like, you just took the deepest sigh I've ever heard. She's like, oh, I just do that. And I'm like, oh, okay.
It has like, I'm not thinking anything. My body's just like, time to sigh. And it feels so good.
I mean, I will say it does feel really good.
And like some people do like moody sighs where like, but it feels really cathartic, like letting that air in and out of your lungs. I just love it. And I don't even realize that I'm doing it.
Well, I think that, you know, stuff like that we do take for granted because like earlier this year when I was like going through so many hard things with my anxiety, I could not take a full deep breath. Like I would literally be like, and it would stop right there. Like I could not take that deep breath. And I feel like, you know, my medication and this podcast and talking about everything, going to therapy has really helped me take that deep ass motherfucking breath. Excuse my language, but we have to emphasize how great it is. And like I really do think that we take, you know, something as little as breathing for granted because it feels so good.
Oh yeah. Like those sighs, man, taking that deep breath. Because I mean, that's like, it's a grounding technique. It's a mindfulness moment where you take in a deep breath, you feel the air fill your lungs, you just like feel like at peace with your body, and then you let it out, And it feels so good.
Yeah, it's definitely, it almost feels like healing, like refreshing, like, and sometimes, like, you do forget to breathe in a sense.
Oh, yeah.
Where, like, you're just so overwhelmed that you don't focus on your breathing. So to take that second, I remember when I very first did my, my very first breathing exercise in therapy, I, like, literally, like, lost it, like, bawling because I was like, oh my, like, I haven't stopped to take a breath in so long. And that taking that breath and just, like, relaxing and just, like, I don't know, like, feeling that moment was just, like, overwhelming. And I just started bawling.
Like, slowing down for a moment. Yeah. And
especially when you feel like you can't slow down.
Yeah. Like, giving yourself the space to actually, like, slow down, focus on your body, like, quiet the thoughts even for a second to be able to just be present and, like, do that.
Especially when you feel like you are unable to do that. And then you do it and you're just like, oh my God. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good transition into kind of what we're talking about today. I wanted to talk a little bit about cognitive behavioral therapy. And because I think that we haven't really talked a lot about, like, what actually happens in therapy.
Right. We haven't.
Like, we've talked about, like, we go to therapy.
Yeah, and, like, experiences and, you know, making it more casual and stuff like that. But we definitely have not touched on, like, what happens. Like, even, I know you mentioned this earlier, and I was like, what is that? So, like, it's so interesting because, especially for people who, you know, want to go to therapy and haven't tried stuff like this before, you know, they don't know what that is. Or EMDR or other, you know, what is it called? Like
modalities, like, different types of, like, therapy practices.
Yeah, like, you know, you don't know what it is. Especially, like, I know when I was first going to therapy, I didn't know what to expect. And I feel like some of these practices are good to talk about because then people can know what to expect when they go to therapy.
And I think that that's kind of the part of it is, like, there's this, like, mystery around therapy. Like, what is therapy? We all picture, like, the laying on the couch and the, like, therapist in a chair. Yes.
How does that make you feel?
Yes.
And it's like, that's not always what that's not what it is. Like, yeah, you know, they ask you that, like, you know, especially, like, when there's certain things, they're like, well, what did that make you feel like? Like, how did that make you feel? But it's not, like, every other sentence.
Yes.
Like, they also, you know, they do, and I didn't know that, like, going into therapy. I did not know there was actual, like, techniques and, you know, I always knew about, like, meditation and deep breathing, but, like, stuff like that, what is it called again? Cognitive
behavioral therapy.
See, I don't even know what that is, and I think it's so neat to talk about that and to learn what it is, because it gives people, like, you can know what to expect going into therapy. You can understand therapy more, and I feel like one of the reasons that therapy is so looked down on is because people don't really know what happens and they don't understand it, and they do see it as just, you know, a person laying on, like, why am I picturing a red couch? I don't know, like a red velvet
I always picture
couch.
like a black leather couch, like the chaise lounge.
Weird. So weird. I picture, like, a red, like, velvet.
Oh,
and,
you
like,
have a very bougie couch that you're thinking of.
Well, and, like, the rest of the room was, like, wooden, and, like, the chair that the therapist is sitting on is, like, leather. She has, like, glasses, and it's, like, very
glasses
dark.
For sure.
Yeah, it's, like, very dark and, like,
she has
moody.
like a little notebook in her hand.
And there's, like, a bookshelf on the wall, and it's like, so how are you feeling? How does this make you feel? And, like, the person at therapy is, like, laying down, and they're like,
yes,
I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how I picture, like, before I went to therapy, that's, like, what I pictured, and that's not anything of what it's like.
No. Most therapy rooms are not that bougie.
Oh, no. Like,
it's like a rented space that they're like, here's a couch and here's some comfy chairs.
Yeah.
I have my bookshelf
of
my,
fidget
like,
toys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I have my office chair that I'll spin around in and chat with you. Like,
yeah.
It's a lot more casual.
I feel like my therapist's office is very casual and, like, comforting. Like, it has, like, it's very, like, nice. You know, everything's white and bright, but also, like, dim.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's, like...
It's like mood lighting. So it's not like those, like, awful fluorescent lights where you walk in and you're just like, oh. It's like the mood lighting where you have, like, a lamp. It's kind of like...
It's comforting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very, like, soothing. It's not overwhelming. And my therapist specifically has, like, nice, like, calming music playing. Yeah. So it's definitely, like, not what is portrayed in, like, movies or... I feel like the most accurate portrayal of therapy that I've seen so far is in that show, oh my god, Working Moms. Have you watched Working Moms?
I have not seen it.
Oh my gosh, it's great. One of the working moms is a therapist, and she has a practice just from her house, and it's literally just like a couch, and she's just talking to you, and it feels natural, and you know, that's a more realistic portrayal of therapy rather than when you see, like, a red velvet or a
Yes,
leather couch,
yes.
and like it's a dark room. Like it's just so.
Yeah.
I feel like talking about stuff like this really helps people prepare for therapy and understand what they're gonna go through when they do decide to go to therapy.
So before you went into therapy, like what did you expect? Like what did you picture it being versus like what it actually was?
Yeah, so I think I pictured like just me talking a bunch and the therapist just being like, okay,
not super interactive.
Yeah, just kind of like listening. And, you know, my therapist obviously listens a lot because that's what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
They're supposed to be there to listen to you. But she also gives a lot of, like, she talks back in like a, like, you know, this happened, maybe this is why this happened, you know, this happens because of this, maybe you're feeling like this because of this. And you know, when I first started going and she would talk back and, you know, how like it would be conversational, and she was like, do you think you feel this way? And, you know, she does a lot of like questions of like, do you think you feel this way because of this? And sometimes I'm like, yes. Or she'll like explain how I'm feeling and I'll be like, yes, I don't know how to put that into words and you just did that for me. But there's, you know, there has been sometimes too where she's like, do you think you feel this way because of this? And I'm like, no. So it's definitely not exactly what I pictured it. I also, my therapist actually like switched locations from when I first started going. And so when I first went, the room was very small and it was still very nice. It was a very nice room, but the room we're in now feels kind of more like an actual room rather than like you said, like a place like in a big building. So it feels, she has her own, I'm super excited for her. She has like her own like building right now. Not like building, but like space in a building that has like 2 rooms.
Okay, so like she has her own office.
Yes. Okay. And she actually has to move because they have some people on the wait list that she's hiring. She just hired another person like the beginning of summer, kind of middle of summer. And they're already growing so much that she's moving in the same building but into a different office because they have so many people on the wait list that they have to have. I know. I was like, I'm so excited for you. So that's nice too because like I didn't expect to like bond that kind of way with my therapist. And, you know, she's very like, she just like, she, you know, she also kind of puts in like her two senses like from her own experiences. And I really appreciate that because a lot of the things I talk about at therapy is for my job. Yeah. And I always kind of think about like running my own business kind of thing, and she kind of gives me her insight from running her own business because she has her own practice. Yeah. And so I think that's super helpful. I really like when she kind of puts in her 2 cents from like her experience. So I didn't expect all of that.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a lot more interactive and more like back and forth than you expected. Yes. Which I think is a good thing because part of going to therapy is we sometimes can't connect the dots or we don't see the whole picture. And then you have someone that can verbalize or validate your experience and what you're thinking and feeling and then say, oh, you know, you mentioned something similar in this situation. It seems to be a trend here. Yeah. Then you start seeing like, oh, I feel a certain way. You can kind of get to those like core beliefs of like, these are some of my main issues and this is how to work on it. And they also offer that like evidence against that sometimes we can't do for ourselves. Yeah.
And I think it's really nice too because she doesn't agree with every single thing that I say. Like there's been things where I say things and she's like, but maybe, you know, it's not that. Like it's, you know, and like one time I actually was talking to her about something that Nate and I went through and I was like, I'm so angry. And she was like, but Nate's just trying to do this. And I was like, oh, so she actually made me realize like from like other points of view other than just my own. And I think that's super helpful too. And, you know, that's something I didn't expect. I kind of just thought a therapist was just going to be like,
You're right all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. But also she is very validating, which I think is super helpful because a lot of the times I always feel like my feelings are dumb, like they're like not useless, but like
not as important.
Yeah, and she's very much like you're allowed to feel this way. I completely understand why you're feeling this way, and that's really nice because I also too think that like going into therapy, I didn't think that, you know, someone would be like so accepting. I won't cry. She's just so really nice. And I feel like I got really lucky because she is the first therapist I've ever had. And her office, actually her first office. Her first office was only 10 minutes from my house.
Oh, and super convenient.
And now it's 40.
Oh, not as convenient.
But 40, we'll say 40 with traffic. Without traffic, it's about 30. Okay. So that's not too bad. But one of the reasons I am willing to drive that 50 minutes is because I do really enjoy her and I really appreciate her.
Oh yeah. If you find a good therapist, like that relationship is so important.
Yeah, and I'll have to tell her on Tuesday.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I think that, you know, you mentioned some things that are really important when you go into therapy, like having a therapist that is validating, that, you know, highlights, you know, the reasonableness of some of the thoughts and experiences you have, but also challenges them, because we don't grow if someone just agrees with everything that we say.
Right.
And having someone that says, well, here's like an opposite thought to that, or here's, you know, another thing that could be happening in that situation is what we need, because if we have someone that just agrees with everything we say, we're never going to grow.
Yeah.
Because we have ourselves to do that.
Yeah. And I actually do this thing where I am mostly with my sister because I care about her so much that I'm kind of pushy, where I'm like, you have to do this, like you like, and I'm like, I don't know how to explain it, not like overbearing, but I'm very much like, just like a overprotective, like older sister.
It's kind of like a motherly role of like, here's like what you need to do, you should do this.
And my therapist is like, listen, like a lot nicer than what I'm about to say, but she's like, you need to cut that shit out. Like, obviously not like that, but like, you know, basically it has been very helpful for me, just like letting, you know, and it's weird because it's like, obviously like we should let people live their own lives, but with my, I mean, she's my little sister, so I get very protective and very like, and so she's been very helpful with like letting me like step back and like telling me that I need to step back and not be like, you know, reminding me that like it is her life, she can make her own decisions. And I mean, obviously I'm never gonna be like, but like I don't know how to explain it. It's just like that, like sisterly, like I care about her so much that I don't want her to like ever get hurt or anything like that.
Yeah. You love them so much that you want to try and protect them from the experiences that will cause them pain and hurt and sadness.
And like you can't do that. And so my therapist is very good about reminding me and like telling me that like I can't do that. Like I can't make decisions for her. I can't persuade her into doing something that she doesn't want. Yeah. All that kind of stuff. And I feel like she's been very helpful because I'm always like, I feel like too with Heather, I've always been very like, why are you doing this? Like, that's not a very good choice. Like, what are you doing? But it's like, they're fine choices. I just get nervous for her because she's my sister and I don't want to see her hurt.
Yes.
And so my therapist has been very helpful with me, like stepping back and not being like, you know what I mean?
Well, and I think that, you know, your therapist is like highlighting, like, we each have our own priorities and we each have our own ways of we want to do things. And just because like we see how someone can be hurt or be in a bad situation doesn't mean that their like values and priorities align with that. And we can't control people and we don't have that power. And no matter how much we care and we want to protect them, we all have to make our own choices and decisions.
Yeah, like you have to live your own life. And so I do think she's been very helpful with challenging me with that. And I feel like even just with Heather, you know, doing things this past year, I've been able to be like have her like tell me something and me be like, okay, like this is really good for her, or this, you know, this might not be great for her, but it is her life.
That kind of takes the weight off of your shoulders though, because you're not responsible for all of her choices.
And I don't know why I feel that way. She's never made me feel that way. I think it's just something that I put on myself.
Because you love her. You love her a whole lot, and you want to take care of her.
I love her so much.
It happens. It happens to all of us with people that we care about. We feel this responsibility. We feel this desire to take care of them and to, like, be almost in that, like, parental role of, like, let me guide you, let me help you.
Yeah, and I also, too, feel like I get in this, you know, and I think it's just something that I've always been kind of, you know, my therapist is like, and I have kind of talked about like how I'm in this role in my family where I'm like the happy one or I'm the calm one, and I feel like it's just something that I'm like, well, I feel like I have this responsibility of like watching over her, or like making sure she does this, making sure she doesn't do stuff like, and I'm just, my therapist is like, girl, calm down, like you have your own life, let her live her life,
kind of
that.
She's
been very helpful,
like that, like. I would love to spend a whole episode talking about like family dynamics and family roles.
Oh,
and, like,
girl, we can do that next.
Oh, I love it. Because
part 1, 2, 3, 4,
5, 10, 6, 7, 8, however you count. Yeah, because we all kind of fall into a role in our family, and like we mentioned earlier with boundaries and different things, we fall into this kind of like set role and way we do things. And then when we get out of that role, it feels really weird. And we're like, how are we supposed to interact? What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, or like when you don't really want to be in that role anymore, but you don't know what other... Oh my gosh. We write this down. We're noting it right now. Next episode, we're going to talk
Check
about...
mark above our heads.
Yes.
Family dynamics.
Family dynamics. Yes. Cognitive
Behavioral
therapy.
Yes.
Catherine.
Yes.
What is that?
So the main idea of cognitive behavioral therapy is how our thoughts can impact our emotions and behavior. And I always like to give this example because a lot of people have this experience, so they can kind of relate to it. So you think about two different students in school. They both get B's on their test.
I feel like this could be a great example of me and you.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. So let's say Courtney and I have a test. We both get B's on it. I feel like you would be excited about
I'd
a B.
be so fucking stoked. Because I have major test anxiety, first of all.
Yes.
And not taking tests anymore makes my life 100 times better. So.
Yes. So Courtney gets excited about a B. And then Catherine, myself on the other hand, feels like a failure because of the B. We both got the same grade. We both took the same test. But the difference in how we feel and behave based on our test is related to our thoughts. Because in my head, I'm thinking a B is a failure. I'm a A+ student. I'm going to let my parents down. I can do better than this. I studied so hard. Why did I not do as well as I should have? Whereas Courtney's like, oh my God, I overcame my test anxiety. I
studied
great.
For so long. Hell yeah.
This was a hard subject. Like, this is great.
Yeah, we'll pretend that it's like math.
Yeah.
I was never great at math, so we'll pretend that it's math. Math is probably my worst subject. So we'll be like, hell yeah. Calculus. Got a
Own
B.
that shit.
Yeah, fuck yeah. We're excited about it being calculus.
Yes.
Cheers to that being calculus. But Catherine's like, a B?
I'm like casually crying behind the school building, like, oh my God, I can't show this test to my parents.
Oh my gosh. No, my mom would have been stoked. I mean, I was pretty much a B student in high school. Ish.
But B is good. And
B's are great.
Yes. And so with that, it's literally the way we are thinking about our experience with that is what impacts our mood and our behaviors around that. And that's kind of what cognitive behavioral therapy is all about, is adjusting and finding more of a middle ground with your thoughts, because a lot of times we have extreme thoughts that kind of feed into this like core belief of like, I'm worthless, I'm not smart, I am not lovable, kind of those deep down things that guide our thoughts and our interactions.
Yeah. So in therapy, I've never done that kind of like practice, I guess. So what, like in therapy, when you go into therapy and you do stuff like that, what can people expect from doing? What is it called again? I'm so sorry.
So CBT for short.
Okay, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
Hell yeah. See,
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. Where if Catherine got it wrong, she'd be like,
oh, I would be panicking. Like, oh my God.
But I'm stoked that I just got that right.
Yes, so I always say CBT for short because that's a lot easier to say.
CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. CBT. Okay,
Yes,
CBT.
yes.
So when you go to therapy, what can you expect your therapist to do as a practice in your therapy session for CBT?
Yes.
CBT. Sorry.
I love it. So one of the easiest things, and this is something that I've done, because there's a lot of different like worksheets and activities that you can do with CBT. So a common one is kind of a worksheet that identifies the situation, your immediate thoughts, evidence that supports that thought, evidence against that thought, and then your emotions and mood kind of at the end of processing it, and an alternative thought.
Interesting. Can we do like a little mini example?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
I'm trying to think of one.
So give me a situation, maybe recently, where you had some like negative thoughts, or it was kind of difficult for you.
A work situation.
Okay,
where I accidentally, I don't know how it happened either, but I included the wrong link in a social media post that was completely editable and completely fixable.
Okay.
It was up for about 4.5 minutes, if that, and I fixed it within 5 minutes.
Okay.
Of it being up. And we don't have a ton of followers. I'm just going to say that. So, like, for my work. So, like, maybe 10 people saw it. Maybe. Anyways, so I felt really terrible that day.
Okay, so that was the situation. So what were your immediate thoughts when you realized you had made that mistake?
Oh my God, my bosses already don't trust me because they don't trust anybody.
Mm-hmm.
They're never going to trust me again.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I suck.
Okay. That's a great example. Because this is exactly, like, what happens. It's, like, that spiral into, like, I'm not doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, core belief system.
Nobody's going to trust me ever again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So
how am I ever going to find a different job?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say your emotions were in that moment? Like, how did you feel about yourself?
I was mad about myself. I felt really
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, and I felt like I couldn't do anything right.
Okay. I'm also very proud of your insight because it can take people a lot of time to even identify emotions and figure out what they're feeling.
Oh, I knew right away, especially because, you know, my bosses both do have a really hard time trusting people.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I was finally starting to get them to trust me after fucking 9 months of working with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did this one thing, and it was like, of course, the biggest project we've worked on all year. And I've literally never made mistakes like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And then this mistake happened, and I was like, God, the one big project.
Mm-hmm.
I've never made a mistake like this before, and it's the
Yeah.
one big project. And I know it's fixable, and it's, you know, it's okay. It's not like it's permanent where, like, for example, Nate's job, if he sends an email to people, he can't edit that email.
Yeah, you can't take that email back.
Yeah,
it's out there.
Yeah, whereas I can, it's a social media post.
Mm-hmm.
I can either edit it or delete it
Yeah.
and repost it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, especially within less than 5 minutes, like,
Yeah.
and it's not like we have hundreds and thousands or tens of thousands of followers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how many people really saw that? You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
anyways.
And in some of the things you were just saying, I think will lead into some of the other pieces of this. So I'm glad that you kind of have that insight already.
Yeah.
So what is the evidence that supports those thoughts of, like, I've made a mistake, they don't, like, I'm not, like, they're not going to trust me, I messed up? Like, what's the evidence that supports those thoughts?
The evidence that supports those thoughts is probably that immediately after that, my bosses were both like, those links are correct. Like, you know, like, kind of like identifying it within every email the rest of that day. Like, these links are correct, this is correct. And also just like, you know, the sole fact that I did make that mistake.
Yeah. And kind of what you had said earlier is, like, you recognize that your bosses take a while to trust people.
Right.
So you have that evidence of, like, noticing that they aren't quick to trust. They take time to kind of let people in that way.
Right.
So you have that evidence of, like, your supervisors have not necessarily, like, trusted people easily in the past.
Yeah, and they've literally, like, mentioned that, like, that they don't, you know, that it takes them a long time to trust people. So I did know that.
And I think that this is an important part of CBT because our thoughts and emotions aren't necessarily coming from nowhere. We have some sort of evidence for it, whether it's messages that we received as a child, things we've seen, like, our bosses do previously, or friends, family, whoever it is that kind of the interactions are happening with.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to highlight it because you're not crazy. You're not out of the realm of reality with that. Like, there is some evidence for those feelings.
And I do feel like that's something that's really hard for people to grasp. Because sometimes it does feel like we're being, you know, dramatic for no reason, or we're overthinking for no reason. And it's like, you know, maybe sometimes there is no reason, but a lot of the times there is a reason behind that.
Yes.
And it's hard for people to believe and accept that and not just be super self-sabotaging and be like, no, I suck at everything.
Yes. We love to devalue our own thoughts and feelings all the time. I love it. I thrive. I'm not going to say I thrive in that. I don't thrive in that.
Love it.
I don't love it. I do it a lot.
It.
Yes. I live in it and I do it a lot. I don't thrive in it. I don't love it.
Not thriving. Not 30, flirty, and thriving.
No, not at all.
Not yet.
Give it a couple years. So now that we have the evidence for those thoughts, what is the evidence against that? Like, what is the, like, evidence in your life, past experiences, current experiences, that tells you that those thoughts are not completely true?
I'd say that this is my first, the fact that that was my first big mistake. That's a good one.
So you haven't necessarily made big mistakes in the past?
Yeah, obviously I've made mistakes, but not one with that big of a project.
Yeah.
Not that one that was that important
Yes.
and intense. The fact that it was editable, and I was able to change it, you know, quickly, and you know, and again, the fact that that this is my first time, so that I've never really done something this major.
And I think another piece to highlight with that too, just because I know about that week and what was going on, there's a lot of other pieces of like that you were dealing with emotional stress and things like that. So it's not like that's your baseline every week.
Yeah.
And you're going
I was
through a
very
lot.
distracted that week.
Yes. Yeah. And
I
so,
was trying my hardest.
yes, you were giving it a lot of effort. And it's not like that's your typical mode where you're kind of trying to just even stay awake and you're feeling exhausted.
Right.
And
I
all
was
that.
definitely off that week. So that's another thing to, evidence against it was that was a very off week for me.
Yes.
It was very unfortunate that big project landed on that same week.
Yes. Which I think for having such a big project and dealing with everything that you were dealing with, like anniversaries of things and kind of just the month of October being a struggle, I think that was really great. Like, out of everything that could have happened.
Yeah. My boss is definitely very stressful and combative all the time, but after that it all happened, and at the end of the day I was like, listen, I'm so sorry if I'm having an off week, and I had kind of warned her earlier that week that I was going through a lot, and so I was like, I'm so sorry, like if I'm not being as not great, but performing as well as I usually am. Yeah. Like I was like, I'm very sorry, I'm trying really hard. It's honestly really hard for me to get out of bed right now, like thank you for being patient with me. And I was very much like appreciative of like, because they were patient with me, it was all of our first times kind of working on that for this company, at least that scope of a project, and I was like, just thank you guys so much for being patient, and I appreciate your guys' like guidance kind of thing, because I will say like they were definitely patient with me, and I did appreciate that that week.
And I think that I also appreciate that you opened up to them, because I know that you haven't felt fully supported for a while, and so I think that was a big step to open up in that way to someone that you
don't really feel comfortable with.
But I do appreciate that you gave them that heads up.
I feel like I had to, because it was just, I was not myself, so I feel like I had to, because I'm not saying that I'm wonderful and that I'm great and that I'm perfect, but I usually perform at a pretty good level, and that week I just was not.
So now that we have kind of the evidence for those thoughts, the evidence against those thoughts, now we create a new thought. So that situation happens where you made the mistake and you have those initial thoughts of,
it was like that I sucked, that I couldn't do anything right,
that you're like not trustworthy, or
not trustworthy, like that nobody could ever trust me again. So
now what's an alternative thought to that? Now that we have the evidence for those thoughts and the evidence against those thoughts, what's more of a middle ground thought for that situation?
I feel like it's like, okay, hey, it's editable, it's okay, it's not permanent, you're going through a lot, you're still trustworthy, it's okay.
So kind of finding that validation of like, yes, I did make a mistake, like not ignoring that, we have to own up to things we do,
right,
but saying, like, acknowledging the whole situation of like, I made a mistake, I fixed it, I was going through a lot, I don't normally do this, so kind of balancing it out,
right. And I will say there were 4 links that I needed to provide 6 links, I think, because it's 8 links, because I did social media and the email, and I only messed up 2.
Okay.
So, and it was in the one social media post. So editable.
Yes.
Anyways, so it was a big mistake and a big project, but a small mistake within the scope of it.
And again, that's kind of the new thought of like making something that feels really big and feels really overwhelming and like horrible into something that's like more realistic and more manageable. And
kind of pointing out that, like, in my case, like, there were 8 links that I needed to provide, and out of those 8 links, 2 were incorrect.
Yes.
So that, that side of it.
Kind of find that balance. And so now that we've kind of identified the evidence, like the new evidence against, the evidence for it, and now the new thought with it, like, how do you feel towards that situation?
I feel like I'm a little like me, because it was a couple weeks ago. I'm like, okay, but I'll say, like, in that moment, it was more of like I'm really working on being compassionate towards myself and compassionate towards what, everything that's going on, especially that week. I was just trying to be nice and compassionate with myself, and so kind of just being understanding and being like, okay, you know, it was editable.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't something that was permanent.
Yeah.
I was able to fix it within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, just kind of being, like, understanding and compassionate and being like, you can't never make mistakes. You are a human.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Going through a lot.
Being a little bit more gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
Not as, like, intense.
Understanding. Yeah.
And so that's, like, a little bit of what CBT is like. Granted, this is very conversational. This is very relaxed. Again, it's just friends talking. This is not a real therapy session.
Right. Disclaimer.
Yes. But that's kind of like an idea of, you know, identifying situations and thoughts and working through them.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good thing for people to practice, you know, at home. Obviously, when stuff is in the moment and it's heated, like, during that moment, if you were to text me and be like, CBT, horny CBT, I'd be like, shut up, Catherine! Just kidding, I would never be that mean to you. But you know what I mean? I'd be like, I'm not going to do this right now. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But, like, later that evening, that's when I can be like, okay, like, take that deep breath we were talking about earlier. That sigh, that feels so great.
Oh, I can feel it right now.
Right? Like, it just feels so wonderful. And being able to, like, work, like, I feel like it's, you know, one thing that I really do like about therapy is that you can, like, therapists, a lot of the time, with my therapist at least, gives you stuff that you can work on in therapy and at home.
Yes. I was going to say homework is a big thing.
Yes, and it's huge, and it's helpful, and, you know, a lot of the times, like, you know, especially for me, I do forget to do my therapy homework a lot, but that is something you can practice at home, where you can be like, okay, this is what I initially thought, this is the evidence against it, and you can very much, like, work on that yourself as well as in therapy.
Yes.
And I feel like that's a really big, because, like, I mean, for an EMDR example, I don't know if you can really do that by yourself.
Yeah, EMDR you can't necessarily do by yourself.
Right.
But there's
it's
probably,
very hard.
Like,
Yeah, like, you probably could, but it's also very hard.
Yeah.
And so something like this is, like, very easy to do in therapy, but it's also very easy to, like, do, you know, later that day or the next day after something happens.
Yeah, and oftentimes with therapy, they'll, like, give you a worksheet to do where, like, the situation where you're like, if Catherine told me in the moment, like, CBT, you'd be like, oh, fuck no. But, like, later on you could do it.
Yeah.
We often give, like, homework where there's a worksheet and it's just those columns where it's like, identify the situation, what were your immediate thoughts, what were your emotions, so that you can do that as homework in between sessions. So you start identifying some, like, common thoughts, common situations.
Yeah.
And start to train your brain, because that's the whole thing, is training your brain to see the evidence against it and create a new thought.
Right. And I know it's, you know, I've mentioned this a couple episodes ago, and it's very hard to believe and understand and talk about, but you control your brain does not control you, and so it's a very, you know, like what you said, like, you, like, controlling your brain and controlling that thought, and it's really hard to get to that process.
It takes time and practice.
Yeah, like, I feel like I'm moving in that direction, but I'm for sure very far away from that.
Well, we've had our whole lives that our brains have been trained one way, and then we're like, hold up, stop. Let's retrain it and think a very different way.
Yeah, and I too, I once read this or saw this thing, and it was like, your very first initial thought is what you, like, were taught, and your second thought is how you actually feel. And so that's super interesting, because, you know, you could, you know, I don't know an example right now, but it's interesting because sometimes you think something and you're like, oh, that's not what I actually think, that's just what I was trained to think. Yeah, and so I feel like this exercise, you know, CBT is very effective to do, like, at home. I feel like it could be very helpful, and it's super easy to do at home, like, and you can even do it, like, for me, I'm a person who likes to write things down, and I like to see things on paper, so it's very much something I could write down and like, physically see, rather than just be thinking it, because usually when I think it, I'm just like,
you're like, whatever,
I'm not thinking it anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's helpful to have a therapist do this with you, because again, like, there's some training there. It's a modality that the person has been trained in to do, but I think that there is some value. It is something that you can do at home. And it's like a thought process where there are some strategies there, so it's kind of like following a guideline almost in a way. And so now if we were to go back to our original situation with our tests, And my thoughts of, like, I got a B and it's a failure.
And me being like, hell yeah, I got a B.
Yes.
What's up, girl?
Yes.
We celebrating tonight, Froze.
Hell yeah. So now if I were to change my original thoughts of, I'm a failure, I'm an A+ student, I have done horribly, and I were to give, like, an alternative thought, it's like accepting that was a difficult test. Math is a hard subject. I studied adequately, and it still was a difficult topic, and it doesn't mean that I didn't try my best. Maybe I can do better next time, or I can look up different studying habits, but it is what it is, and I didn't slack off, and I tried.
Right, and I really think that a big part of, this practice is that people don't always look at the whole picture, where they just look at, like, oh my god, I failed this test, whereas maybe, you're failing this test and your home life isn't great, your parents are getting a divorce, or, an animal just died, or, whatever it may be, like,
or
something
maybe the whole
hard.
class failed it because it was a really fucking hard test.
Like, something happened and you're not looking at the whole picture, you're just looking at, oh my gosh, I got a B, or I got a C, whatever it may be, I'm terrible, I'm awful, I didn't put this right link in the social media post, but you're not thinking about, like, what else you're going through, and you're only thinking about that. And I feel like this practice is really good to understand and to see the whole picture.
So I think that kind of, now that we've had the whole, like, running through a CBT exercise, I think this is kind of a good place to kind of wrap up and kind of come to a close. I think that this is a little bit of an example of, like, kind of what therapy is like. Again, this is very casual. This is just, like, two friends talking. And you might not be doing CBT. There might be a better modality that fits for your diagnosis or your situation. This is not the end-all, be-all type of modality.
And this is not the only thing that will happen in therapy. There's a bunch of different practices. There's a bunch of different things that your therapist might do with you.
So this is just like a snippet. It's just to give you some sort of comfort level, some sort of idea.
Right. And to talk about, like we mentioned earlier, like, what therapy could actually be like. And it's not just someone laying on a couch being like, oh, I'm not feeling great today. And the therapist being like, oh, my glasses aren't in here right now. But the therapist being like, and how does that make you feel? Like, that's, like, so this kind of obviously doesn't give you a great, like, dive of what exactly therapy looks like, but it definitely gives you a preview of what you could be doing, and it helps normalize what therapy is, and it's not this weird construct of, like, you laying on a couch and your therapist like writing in their notebook. My therapist doesn't even have a notebook out.
I do.
She does when we do EMDR.
Yeah.
So because that's and we can get into EMDR in a totally different episode.
I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, but, like, because in that kind of stuff, like, you have to take notes because you touch on specific stuff in the next one. So I'm guessing probably for CBT, you should probably have a notebook.
Yeah.
But, like, when we're just talking and we're just having regular therapy sessions, or when she helps me do, like, breathing exercises, she doesn't have a notebook.
Yeah. Because she's present in the moment with you.
Exactly. And she's, conversational and...
Yeah. So if you guys are thinking about doing therapy, you can even just try out a first session, see how it goes, give it a try for a moment.
Ask if your therapist does, like, a phone consultation or an in-person consultation, whatever you're most comfortable with. When I first started, we did a phone consultation. So, it was a kind of, like, what do you want? What are you looking for? What kind of therapist are you looking for? And luckily I found a great one on my first try, but, like, not everyone's going to be that lucky. And so it's like, keep searching until you find the right one. Have that consultation of making sure, your therapist is giving, what to expect, and just making sure that you guys are both comfortable. Yeah.
And overall, just take care of yourself, you guys. That's what's important.
Self-care.
Whether you need to take a deep sigh or
deep sighs.
Or have a little frosé to let off some steam on a Friday evening.
Cheers.
Cheers. Or if you just need to talk to a friend, do what you need to do. Take care of yourselves. And join us next week for our next episode.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to your platform of choice. Whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. We're most places. And if we're not where you listen to, let us know.
Yes. And also go follow us on Instagram at That's Totally Normal, right? Where we post some inspirational things, some just positive affirmations.
As Catherine has said in the previous episodes, thoughtful words.
Phrase of the day.
Lots of stuff. We also give a little bit more insight of like who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Give some fun Catherine and Courtney pictures.
Yeah, you might see us like struggling on a Friday photo or like looking super cute friendship time.
Super drunk, hanging out at our pool. Our pool. My pool. Like,
I live here basically. It's fine.
Yeah, so follow us on Instagram. If you do like this episode, please give this a thumbs up. Mm-hmm. If you guys ever have any questions, our DMs are always open. We are always here to chat. You know, we really want this podcast to be like friendship time. We are here to be your friends. Like,
yeah,
we just want to like make everyone feel comfortable and, you know,
connect with us.
So,
all right, guys.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next Thursday in our next episode.
Yeah.
Bye, friends.
Matane. So, fuck.
We just jinxed it. We just said you didn't touch it. Oh, hold on. It's our Alexa alarm. So turn on the AC. Alexa, stop!
Oh my god.
No, you can hear everything through that vent.
Even if I did that, it would be going on for an hour because no one could ever hear me. I'm so impressed.
Ooh, that was loud.
Yeah, that was a solid clap. I felt that in my body.
Did I hated how that felt. Okay, anyways. Oh, fuck, I just touched the microphone.